There are so many different ways that you can enhance your portrait images, and one of my favorite is the ability to add dimensions to someone's hair. Just by using selective highlights and lowlights in certain parts of the hair, you can take an image and really pump up the way that it looks. Let me go ahead and jump into Perfect Effects and show you how easy it is to add this adjustment. Once you have your image open in Perfect Effects, the filter that we're going to be using is called the adjustment brush, and it's found down at the bottom of the filter stack, indicated by a brush with a plus and a minus sign over it. This allows us to do multiple adjustments at once, and that's what we'll be needing to do because we're going to add brightness, warmth, and vibrance all in one go. Let's go ahead and click on that icon to apply an adjustment brush. Now what happens when you add an adjustment brush layer is that it adds a black mask. That means that as of right now, we can't see any changes on our image until we paint them in ourselves. What we need to do is scroll down to the Filter Options pane on the bottom right-hand corner of our screen and choose which adjustments we'd like those to be. Right now, the brightness is set to 70, which is really nice and high. We also want to change the warmth and the vibrance. I'm going to take the warmth slider and move it over just a couple of points, as well as the vibrance slider a few points. Now we don't want to go too far, but we are going to be painting in these highlights very slowly. You'll notice that my mouse has automatically been turned into a brush, so I don't need to worry about selecting my masking brush tool. And then up in the tool options bar, you'll want to make sure that there are a couple of things set here. Your mode should be paint in, because we want to paint in the lightness and the warmth on the hair. The size can be readjusted, but we'll want to make sure that this is very small. So I'm going to drop the size down quite far. Maybe not all the way down to 30, but somewhere very close. I also want to take my feathering amount and raise it all the way up. We want an extremely soft-edged brush because if we paint with a hard brush, it's going to be even more obvious that we're painting in highlights. And then last is the opacity. You never want to start out by painting in 100% of an adjustment like this. By lowering the opacity down to about 30 or 40, we can slowly paint an adjustment and be more selective about where it ends up. The last option here is going to be the perfect brush, and we want to make sure that that's turned off. Because her hair is mainly just one color here, we don't need to turn on the edge detection technology. The last thing that I'll mention is that I'm using a Wacom tablet today, especially when you're working with an object that's very fluid, the way that hair is, and she was shaking her hair in this shot a little bit, so it's extremely fluid. Being able to have access to a pen and a tablet is going to change the way that these highlights look. You'll have an easier time of getting around all of the different curves of her hair. So now that we've got all those adjustments in, you want to make sure that the most important part of adjusting and applying the highlights is that you follow the natural look of the hair. You never want to click and drag an adjustment straight down across the image. By doing that, we're cutting through the natural hair and we're making it look fake. So follow the natural lines of the hair and we'll just click and drag along the top of the head and pull down towards the end. This process can take a little bit of time, so we're going to go through very slowly and make sure that we're being very fluid along all of these different lines. Because we have a lower opacity, we can choose areas that we want to have more highlights. Say we want more on the top and less in the middle where there already are some natural highlights. You want to make sure that you go through and add a little bit of brightness and warmth to blend together the top of the hair as well as the tendrils that we're applying these changes to. Go through and click and drag. You also want to make sure that you pay attention to the fact that some areas of hair may be popping out of others. So instead of going through and drawing an entire line from the bottom of this hair tendril all the way up to the top, you want to stop at right where it ends and it goes into the rest of her hair. I'm just going to go through and keep on painting over the areas. Again, because of that lower opacity, we're choosing which spots are going to have more or less highlights on them. And we're just following the lines of all of these different threads. We'll go through and make sure we add highlights in areas that definitely could use it, like the edges of the hair, to brighten those up a little bit. And many other spots that could use just a little bit of dimension. Now once we're done and we've gone through and we've cleaned up most of the hair, we've added these nice bright warm highlights, we can go through and we can do another adjustment brush layer. Back up in your filter stack, we're going to click the plus button one more time where the adjustment brush lies. When we do this, it will automatically add another adjustment brush layer, and we're going to do the exact opposite of what we've just done. We're going to take our brightness slider in our filter options pane and move this to the left. We want to darken out some areas to even out the hair so that there are light and dark spots. We'll also go down to the color section and make sure that our vibrance is dropped down, maybe 2 or 3 points, and we're going to leave the warmth the way that it is. Now we'll go through on the areas that we didn't add the highlights and add a couple of lowlights. We're going to follow the exact same rule where we follow the edges of the hair. You want to make sure that your opacity is nice and low. So if 30 is a little too high, we could drop that down even further. And we'll click and paint over the areas that we need to add just a little bit of darkness to. You want to be very careful because typically when you're using the darkness or adding lowlights to the hair, they're stronger than when you add highlights to the hair. It's also really nice because we already added the highlights, we can tell the areas that need a little bit of extra dimension because they're in between those brighter, warmer spots. Now once we go through and we add all of these, we've got our nice dark areas. We've added some of this to the hair. It's starting to look a little bit better. I want to take a look at my before and after. By pressing Control Command P on my keyboard, I can take a look at my original image. This is what we started out with. And my after image, where we've gone through and manually adjusted our highlights and lowlights. Just by adding a little bit of dimension to the hair, all of that red around her face is going to start to sparkle. We can see all of those highlights really beautifully, but we didn't completely blow out every part of the hair just by going in and making sure we added a couple of lowlights to keep that really nice three-dimensional look.